At 54 years of age, I have spent a significant portion of my life under the impression that I grasped the true essence of love and its expected form. One embarks on the journey of marriage at a tender age, nurtures a family, and steadfastly follows the path laid before them. Amidst the tempests and the tranquil moments, I devoted countless years to nurturing the desires of others, allowing my own heart to fade into silence. I found myself in a state of numbness, not quite unhappy, merely existing rather than truly living. Yet, an unexpected turn of events unfolded. An unforeseen occurrence. Something that trembled the very earth beneath my feet for countless years. Never did I imagine that something of this nature could unfold to me. I urge you to avoid the error I once made. It began with an event so commonplace that, in hindsight, it seems almost ridiculous. A straightforward journey to the grocery store. It was a Thursday afternoon, the sort where the sky wavered indecisively between the embrace of spring and the warmth of summer. As I emerged onto the porch, shopping list in hand, my phone suddenly buzzed to life. Once more, my daughter Olivia found herself ensnared by the demands of her job. She constantly finds herself balancing a multitude of tasks and inquired if Michael, her husband, could stop by and give me a ride instead. Michael and I have consistently maintained a friendly rapport, courteous, considerate. He was the sort of son-in-law that made you feel fortunate to have him in the family. Steadfast and reliable, perhaps a touch reserved at times, yet undeniably compassionate. Our exchanges never ventured into profound territory. Casual conversation, for the most part. How is the garden faring? Would you like some assistance with those boxes? Such matters. As he rolled up in that dark blue truck, window lowered and sunglasses perched on his nose, I didn't hesitate for a moment. I snatched my purse, secured the door with a decisive click, and settled into the passenger seat. "Thank you for the ride, sweetheart," I said, securing my seatbelt. He smiled, yet a peculiar depth lingered in his gaze. Somewhere between tension and ease, a delicate balance hangs in the air. He seemed to be preparing himself for an impending moment. "No problem at all, Eleanor," he replied, easing away from the curb. It seemed like a perfect opportunity to converse. I arched an eyebrow. About what? He paused, his fingers drumming lightly against the steering wheel. "I've been wanting to say something. I've been pondering it quite a bit." A soft laugh escaped my lips. "Michael, are you attempting to end our relationship as your mother-in-law?" He chuckled, yet the mirth failed to illuminate his gaze. "No, it was something different." He hesitated. I see you. I mean, truly see you. And I doubt anyone else does. Not even Olivia." That struck me like a chill. The truck glided past well-known avenues, the quaint bakery, the elementary school where Olivia once roamed, the corner lot where neighbors perpetually drenched their grass. Yet, in that instant, none of it felt recognizable. My ears buzzed faintly, reminiscent of the way they do when something within stirs. Unexpectedly, I asked, "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, uncertainty lacing my words. He stole a glance at me before returning his gaze to the road ahead. "You carry so much weight. You wear a smile as if everything is all right, but deep down it isn't, is it?" I turned to the window, seeking solace in the fleeting blur of the passing scenery. "Michael, that's kind of you, but I'm all right. I face my share of challenges, yes, but I cope." "I know you do," he replied gently. "That's what makes it painful to witness." His words lingered between us, thick and charged like the air before an impending storm. I found myself at a loss for words. Part of me simmered with anger. Who was he to presume to know my feelings, to dictate my experiences? Yet, another part of me, softer and yearning, craved to be acknowledged, even if just fleetingly. As we paused at the red light by the supermarket, his gaze met mine once more. He truly saw me. "You don't always have to wear the mask of strength, Eleanor." In that moment, warmth surged through my chest, a bewildering blend of embarrassment, confusion, and an indescribable emotion. "I think you've misunderstood," I finally managed to say. "I'm not. This is simply unacceptable." He nodded slowly. Maybe it's just something no one's had the courage to say. The light turned green, and the moment slipped away, yet lingered in the air. We continued our journey in silence, tension enveloping us like the aroma of warm asphalt and sun-baked leaves. When he parked, I reached for the door handle without meeting his gaze. "Thanks for the ride, Eleanor," he said softly. I hesitated, hand resting on the door. "You deserve more than just getting through the day." I remained silent. I stepped out, closed the door carefully behind me, and walked toward the automatic glass doors of the store, each step heavier than the last. I was engulfed in a haze of uncertainty. Something had shifted within me, and his words echoed relentlessly in my mind. "You deserve more than just getting through the day." That night, sleep eluded me. I lay there, the ceiling fan spinning slowly above, casting soft shadows that danced like fleeting thoughts across the walls. The silence in the house, the kind I once cherished, now felt like a weight pressing down on me. My bed seemed to expand, its chill seeping into my bones, while my thoughts spiraled back to that moment in the car with Michael. What was it that he perceived in me that prompted those words? Was it sympathy, worry, or something entirely different? The following morning unfolded in its usual rhythm. Coffee brewed, toast toasted, the cat fed, yet everything felt slightly askew, as if I were observing myself from afar. I glanced at my phone and noticed a message from Olivia, expressing gratitude for my understanding regarding the last-minute change. I walked to the fence, my pulse quickening with each step. The air was thick with anticipation as I approached him. He stood there, casual yet somehow magnetic, his presence drawing me in. "Need a hand?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. He looked up, a grin spreading across his face, and I felt a flutter in my chest. "Always," he replied, and in that moment, the world around us faded, leaving just the two of us and the promise of what might come next. I was tired of maintaining a facade of neutrality. I had planned to address it this weekend. He offered a gentle smile. "Perhaps you don't need to shoulder everything alone all the time." That familiar, earnest gaze of his pierced through my defenses once more, and I despised how it made me feel. We strolled toward the shed. The step was indeed loose, and he knelt to inspect it. I lingered nearby, arms crossed, making a conscious effort to avoid his gaze. "You know," he remarked without lifting his eyes. "When Olivia and I first began our relationship, she confided that her mother was the strongest woman she had ever known." I remained silent. He continued, explaining how her mother held everything together after her father left, working 2 jobs while still managing to prepare dinner each night. He emphasized that her mother never cried, not once. I felt a lump in my throat. I admitted softly that I had cried, just not where she could see. At that moment, he looked up, locking eyes with me. That was the part that shattered my heart. I turned away, blinking rapidly. "Michael, why are you sharing these things with me?" He rose slowly, brushing dust from his hands, "Because no one ever speaks them aloud to you, and they ought to." The air between us hung heavy. The garden, the shed, the sun dipping low in the sky. Everything else faded into obscurity. A sensation surged within me, tight and raw. "I'm not sure this is appropriate," I repeated, my voice quivering more than I intended. "I'm not trying to cross a line," he replied. "But I can't keep pretending. I notice how lonely you seem." His words struck deeper than I anticipated, for he spoke the truth. I cast my eyes down to the cracked step, evading his gaze. "Loneliness isn't a crime. It's merely a part of life sometimes." He took a step closer, not too close, but near enough that I could sense the shift in the air between us. "It doesn't have to be," he said. We stood there in silence, the light softening around us as the sun dipped lower behind the trees. I felt as if I were teetering on the edge of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. When he finally spoke again, his voice was quiet. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know someone sees you." Then he turned and walked back to his truck. I made no move to stop him, nor did I call out. Instead, I remained rooted in place, my heart racing, thoughts a chaotic web, as I watched the red glow of his taillights diminish into the distance. That night, sleep eluded me, but it wasn't mere restlessness. It was something deeper, a stirring, a recollection, a question that had lain dormant for decades. What if there's still more waiting for me? I can't pinpoint when it began, this subtle tug in my chest that surfaced each time Michael crossed my mind. Perhaps it was that initial moment in the car, or perhaps it had been simmering for years beneath the surface, unnoticed, like a slow leak in a pipe. All I knew was that after he departed that night, I felt a sense of awakening. In the days that followed, I endeavored to maintain my routine. I baked, I read, I ventured to the market. I even paid a visit to Olivia and the kids on Saturday, sitting in their bright living room, sipping tea while Michael assisted their youngest with a puzzle. Everything appeared normal, felt normal, yet something had shifted. He barely gazed at me that afternoon, not with indifference, but with a kind of respectful distance. Perhaps that should have soothed my anxiety. Instead, it only intensified it, as a part of me yearned for him to look my way, to utter a word, to bridge the gap between us once more and tug at the thread we had begun to unravel. After our encounter, Olivia accompanied me to the car. "He's been preoccupied lately," she remarked nonchalantly. "Michael, something's weighing on his mind." I struggled to maintain a steady tone. "Have you asked him about it?" She merely shrugged. "He simply mentioned that work had been intense." I trust him, yet I know Michael tends to keep things to himself. I nodded, offering her a gentle smile, and drove home, my stomach heavy with guilt and my heart restless. The following morning, the rain fell softly, a steady spring drizzle that infused the air with the scent of fresh starts. I stood by the window, observing the droplets cascade down the glass, contemplating all the emotions I was meant to suppress. Then, my phone vibrated. "Michael, are you available today?" "I need to talk to you alone." I lingered over the message, my fingers hovering above the keys before I finally typed a single word in response. "Yes." He arrived just before noon. No excuses this time. No errands or broken steps. Just the two of us in his truck, the world muted by the rain. We drove in silence at first, the wipers moving back and forth like a metronome, syncing with my heartbeat. I sensed him stealing glances, searching for the right words. Eventually, he pulled over by a tranquil park on the outskirts of town. Empty benches, mist hanging in the air, trees dripping like they were sighing. "I don't know how to say this without it sounding wrong," he said, turning off the engine. "But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." My breath caught. "Michael, I know how it sounds and I know it's complicated, but something happened in that car the other day. Something real. I don't know what it means. Not yet, but I can't ignore it." I looked down at my hands, twisting them in my lap like I used to when I was a girl. "You're married to my daughter." "I know, and I love her. Yet, this isn't merely a matter of preference. It's about recognizing another person, forging a connection that took me by surprise. A bond one find impossible to overlook." His voice carried no desperation, no plea. It was simply genuine. Excruciatingly genuine. And therein lies the difficulty. "Are you aware of what you're expressing?" I inquired, striving to maintain a steady tone. "Indeed, I am expressing my desire to cease the pretense. I recognize the extent of your sacrifices for others. I see how deeply you've concealed parts of yourself merely to continue on. It pierces my heart, tears brimmed, distorting my sight. Michael, I haven't opened up to anyone like this in years. Not since Olivia's father walked away. Not since I resolved it was safer to abandon hope." He reached out gently, placing his hand over mine. "I'm not demanding anything you're unprepared for. I merely want you to understand that you're not unseen. You're not erased. And you're not solitary." For a fleeting moment, we lingered in that stillness, the rain cocooning the truck in quietude. His hand was warm, anchoring, and mine remained steadfast. I was acutely aware of the boundaries we were dancing around, fully cognizant of the repercussions tied to every unvoiced sentiment that flickered between us. Yet, there was another truth that emerged within me. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I sensed a profound visibility. Not merely as a mother or a caretaker, but as a woman, an individual still capable of feeling, desiring, yearning. I turned to him, my eyes brimming with unasked questions. "What do we do now?" I inquired. He hesitated, his grip on my hand gentle, as if he feared I might dissolve into thin air. In that hushed moment shared between us, I understood that the answer was not yet within reach, not easily. Yet the questions had already transformed everything. That night, sleep eluded me once more. This time, however, it wasn't guilt that haunted my thoughts. Not entirely, at least. It was something more profound, a weight in the center of my chest that resisted release. Michael's words had unearthed a buried fragment of my soul, a piece I had concealed for so long that I nearly forgot it existed. His kindness, his honesty, it was as if I stood before a mirror I had avoided for decades. And now that I couldn't unsee what was reflected back at me. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee, listening to the ticking clock, letting it measure the weight of time I could never get back. I knew I had to speak to him again. Not to continue what had started, but to end it carefully, truthfully, before it crossed into something that couldn't be undone. I asked him to meet me at the botanical garden. It was a quiet place just outside town where I used to take Olivia when she was a little girl. The same winding paths, the familiar stone benches nestled beneath the willows, the gentle air infused with the fragrance of blooming life. It felt like the perfect setting for something fragile. He arrived precisely on cue, as he always did. Spotting me by the koi pond, I noticed the concern etched in his gaze. I didn't allow him to break the silence first. "I need you to listen," I said softly, before either of us could utter words we might later regret. He nodded, his hands clasped in front of him like a child awaiting guidance. What transpired between us, what we experienced, was undeniably genuine. I understand that, and I won't pretend otherwise. But Michael, we crossed a boundary not with our bodies, but with our hearts. That boundary holds significance. He cast his gaze downward, his jaw clenching, yet he remained silent. I allowed it to unfold because I was lonely. I had forgotten the sensation of being truly seen. And you? You brought back the awareness that I am still a woman, not merely a mother. I needed that reminder more than I realized. Finally, he met my gaze. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone," he said. "I know," I whispered. "Neither was I." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, bringing with it the sweet fragrance of lilac. We settled onto the bench, side by side, maintaining a distance, our gazes averted. "Michael, you have a wife, my daughter. She may not perceive you as I do, but she could if you allow her to see you. If you speak to her with the same honesty you've shared with me." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "And you? How about you?" I must rediscover the art of perceiving my own existence, independent of another's gaze, to affirm my reality. I hesitated. There's something stirring within me, and for that I am thankful. Yet, I refuse to be the catalyst for your destruction of something sacred, nor will I be the one who allows herself to dwell in another's shadow. He breathed out, deep and unsteady. "Indeed, you are correct." I smiled gently, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "Isn't that the most unfortunate aspect?" He let out a soft chuckle. "Indeed, it is." We lingered in silence for a moment more, observing the koi disturb the water beneath the lily pads. As we prepared to say our goodbyes, I placed my hand on his arm, driven not by desire, but by a deep sense of appreciation. "Thank you, Michael," I said, "for reminding me of my existence." He nodded. "And thank you for being brave enough to let go." That evening, I found myself at the window once more, observing as the sky deepened into darkness above the trees. A sense of difference enveloped me now. Neither lighter nor heavier, but rather more complete, as if a long-lost piece had finally reappeared, just in time to impart the lessons I needed to recall. I would take it along wherever I went. The ache, the wonder, the reminder that even after all these years, I remained capable of feeling deeply and that it's never too late. It is a delayed return to one's own essence. Affection often comes to us in unexpected shapes and forms. At times, it reveals itself in subtle gestures, in unanticipated dialogues, in the poignant farewells. Yet, when it arrives, even if just for a fleeting moment, it possesses the power to transform.